The chamber pulsed with low blue light, humming beneath the weight of interstellar silence. High Archon Threx stood at the apex of the council platform, his angular frame cloaked in ceremonial armor that shimmered with iridescent alloys mined from stars long dead. His 7 eyes blinked asynchronously as he reviewed the data feed glowing before him. The report was brief, but what it implied had already begun to rot the stability of the Confederacy's inner circles. "Begin playback," Threx commanded, voice steady but laced with a rare thread of uncertainty. The room, once a ceremonial place of judgment and strategy, had been converted into a classified war briefing chamber. 37 representatives from 16 species sat in grave silence, all eyes fixed on the central sphere as Earth's war history began to unfold. What they expected were tribal skirmishes, maybe a few primitive chemical weapons, and the occasional foolish display of nationalism. What they witnessed in the first 3 minutes left Ambassador Kellen of the Rithari visibly trembling, a race known for their unshakable stoicism. They saw the trenches of World War I, men drowning in mud and mustard gas, bayonets rusted with blood. The footage cut, without ceremony, to Hiroshima, a sudden flash of white, followed by the absence of everything. Children vaporized. Shadows etched permanently into stone. The feed did not pause. It did not warn. The Confederacy had long prepared for hostile contact, pirate races, rogue AI, viral empires, but nothing had ever prepared them for humans. Not because of technology, not because of strength, but because of something deeper. A madness coded into their instincts. A cruelty that didn't stem from necessity, but creativity. "Is this chronological?" asked Commander Uxel of the Direct, his voice metallic and shaken. "Yes," Threx replied. They hadn't even reached the 21st century yet. General Viarun shifted in her seat, mandibles twitching with unease. "And these are not simulations?" "Historical records," Threx confirmed. "Verified through at least 4 cross-species observational archives." "There are children," someone whispered. "Fighting. Killing." It was the first time in 5 galactic cycles that High Archon Threx saw fear ripple like wildfire through a council chamber. He paused the playback. "This is only preliminary footage," he said. "We haven't begun the psychological operations files, nor the biological warfare segments." Kellen stood abruptly, breathing shallowly. "This is not a species in conflict with itself. This is a species that weaponized conflict." Threx nodded once. Hence the urgency. There had been debates for cycles about humanity. Earth was originally designated as a contained development zone, a policy used for sentient species considered too volatile to join the greater galactic community. But Earth's electromagnetic leakage had become impossible to ignore. Their broadcasts had reached beyond the galactic veil. Radio waves, television, live war footage. They offered the universe a window into their nature, and some were now watching. Not all were content to observe. 3 days ago, a Sornian scout vessel, unauthorized, landed near a human military installation in northern Africa. Within 6 minutes, the entire crew was incinerated by an automated drone strike. No warning, no identification period, no survivors. The Confederacy's peace faction believed it to be an accident. The military wing saw it as a message. That was the fracture Threx now faced. A divided council. 2 opposing paths. Observe or intervene. Curiosity or caution. Threx summoned the holographic model of Earth, letting it rotate slowly in the void above the central dais. Blue oceans. Green landmasses. A world that looked peaceful until you peeled back the skin. "We cannot approach them as we did the Malzine," said Varun. "They are not unified. They are not even at peace with themselves." "That is exactly why some believe we must reach out now," Threx replied, "before they become something worse." Uxel leaned forward. "Worse." Threx's eyes adjusted, blinking in sequence. "Before they look outward." A silence bloomed across the chamber, deep and suffocating. Kellen sat down slowly. "You believe they're preparing to expand." "They already are," Threx said. "Space programs, military satellites, AI-assisted targeting systems. It will not be long before they reach Confederacy borders." And when they do, we must ask, what will they bring with them? The room had no answer. The Confederacy's standard protocol for species assessment involved 3 stages: observation, cultural decoding, and intent modeling. Humanity had broken that model. Their behavior defied logic trees, fractured AI analysis systems, and corrupted empathy simulators. Their literature is filled with war. Threx continued. Their games simulate killing. Their fiction often begins with diplomacy and ends in genocide. They fear extinction, said Vieroon quietly. Threx turned toward her. And yet they've nearly caused it, on themselves, 5 times in a single century. He allowed a brief silence before speaking again. There is one solution, Threx said. We review the full extent of their historical combat data. We show it to the Council, unfiltered. If their war is only a symptom, we must understand the disease. And if it's not a disease? Asked Uxel. Then it's a design, Threx said. And we prepare accordingly. Authorization was granted. A task force of diplomats, sociologists, and veteran commanders was formed within the hour. The chamber was sealed. No footage was to be broadcast beyond its walls. What they were about to see would either solidify their confidence or shatter it. No one, not even Threx, knew which it would be. As the delegates filed out, some in silence, others in hushed debate, Threx remained behind, alone. He turned back to the paused image, a human soldier, smiling through a dust-covered face, holding a rifle too large for his frame, standing amid the ruins of a city he had helped destroy. Behind him, another soldier filmed him laughing. Threx stared into the stillness and whispered to himself, "They don't fear war. They celebrate it." The playback resumed. The chamber had no windows. It was buried beneath 60 meters of neutron-reinforced alloy, a vault designed not to keep enemies out, but truth in. Inside, the Confederacy's elite gathered once more, this time smaller in number. 10 delegates had already withdrawn from the mission, citing physiological disturbance after the initial viewing. Their seats remained empty, but unacknowledged. At the center of the room stood a newly constructed hollow array, upgraded specifically for this task. It could project immersive reconstructions at 1-to-1 scale, allowing viewers to walk through recorded environments as if they were there. Threx watched it ignite with a soft pulse, his expression unreadable. Commander Vieroon adjusted the frequency dials on her visor, her exoskeletal armor humming faintly as it recalibrated to the array's war environment settings. She had served in 14 border conflicts across 3 spiral arms. She had survived the Arathel incursion, which claimed 5 billion lives. She was not prepared for Earth. The program began in silence. Smoke, thick and oily, rolled through the projection like fog. They were suddenly in Stalingrad, 1942. Buildings cracked open by artillery, rats pouring through basements, and snow turned black by fuel and blood. Human bodies, civilians, soldiers, indistinguishable, lay strewn like discarded parts. Kellen stepped backward, almost slipping on a projected piece of rubble. "This is madness," he murmured. "They killed in inches. They lived in inches." Vieroon corrected coldly. The scene shifted without warning. Hiroshima. A white flash, total silence. Then the aftermath. A city razed to ash. A woman's shadow burned onto a staircase. Children weeping without eyes. One of the younger observers, a Rixian psychologist, collapsed, unable to continue. Medics pulled him from the chamber. No one spoke. Threx allowed the simulation to continue. He believed they had to see it all. Not because he was heartless, but because ignorance would cost more than discomfort. Next came Vietnam. The jungle thick and alive with rot. Human soldiers moved through it like ghosts, their bodies painted in camouflage, their minds dulled by drugs and exhaustion. Napalm strikes. Screaming civilians. A girl running down a dirt road, her body aflame. "This is not combat," said Uxel, shaking his head. "This is theater. Ritualized destruction." Kellen's voice was hoarse. "No, it's worse. Ritual implies meaning." They watched as humans developed precision, not for mercy but efficiency. Drones replaced men. Missiles became near silent. Death was administered at the push of a button. Remote killings from across continents. One screen showed a pilot in Nevada joking over coffee as he launched a strike that wiped out a wedding in the Middle East. A pattern emerged. The closer humans came to controlling death, the less they seemed to question its necessity. Vieirun turned her gaze toward Threx. How does a species evolve this way? He answered without looking at her. They never stopped being prey. The room shifted again. Bosnia, Rwanda, North Korea. The screens cascaded with atrocities, faster now, overlapping. Genocide accelerated by propaganda. Dictators rising not through strength, but through the manipulation of fear and identity. Death normalized. Cheered. Then came the footage from their entertainment archives. Simulated war. Virtual violence. Billions of humans consuming images of murder for pleasure. Children acting out war scenarios as play. Teenagers trained to kill through games. Uxel stood abruptly, his breathing erratic. They raised themselves on slaughter. They made a joy. Vieirun didn't rise, but her voice cracked for the first time. Some of them resisted. I saw protests. I saw grief. Yes, said Threx, his tone flat. But never enough to stop the next war. The simulation ended. The silence that followed was not relief. It was paralysis. In a single cycle, half of the observers filed formal resignations. Others began arguing, not about what they had seen, but what should be done now that they had seen it. Kellen was the first to speak after the lights returned. His voice was quiet, but edged with something raw. If they ever unify, it will not be for peace. It will be for conquest. Vieirun shook her head. Or extinction. Of us or them? Threx asked. No one answered. The High Council was fractured. The majority leaned toward non-contact, a policy of complete quarantine. Earth would be surrounded with stealth satellites, monitored indefinitely, but never approached. They would be watched like a wound that might one day rupture. But there were whispers. From the military wing. From the darker academic sectors. Whispers that perhaps humanity should be studied more deeply, not to protect against them, but to learn from them. Vieirun rose from her seat. Her armor had dulled slightly, stained with the echo of simulated blood. If they ever come to our worlds, she said, they will not conquer us through fleets. They will break our minds first. Kellen was slower to stand. Do you still believe there's something worth saving in them? Threx didn't move. Not worth saving. Worth fearing. Outside the chamber, the corridors of the Citadel were quiet, unaware of the horrors that had unfolded beneath them. But inside, something had changed. Not just in the policy. In the hearts of the Council. For the first time, they understood that humanity was not just another rising species. It was a contagion of thought. And it was spreading. Threx turned back to the darkened simulation pod. Though the display was off, he could still see the image burned into his memory. A soldier carrying a wounded enemy out of a battlefield, sobbing uncontrollably. Even monsters, he whispered, sometimes cry. But no one heard him. The diplomatic cruiser Veil of Order glided silently above Earth's exosphere, hidden behind adaptive camouflage and phase-refracting shields. It had been stationed there for 72 Earth hours, watching, recording, listening. Inside its soundless core, a different kind of war was being waged, one not of weapons, but of conviction. Threx stood at the central viewport, gazing down at the blue and white sphere below. It looked calm from here, almost innocent. He had stared at it for hours, searching for a fracture in its illusion. There was none. Only beauty masking violence, like a blade polished to reflect the sky. Behind him, Vieirun and Kellen entered the chamber. Their footfalls were soft, deliberate. The silence between them was not discomfort, but exhaustion. They've begun transmitting again, Kellen said, placing a crystalline data shard into the ship's console. Uncoded. Deliberate. Threx didn't turn. Let me hear it. The chamber filled with sound. Human voices. Not leaders. Not soldiers. Civilians. News broadcasts, podcasts, music. Laughter followed by screaming. Pleas for justice drowned beneath advertisements. One child read a poem about peace. Another was filmed being struck down during a protest. The contrast wasn't just jarring, it was systemic. They're not hiding who they are, Vierun said. That should terrify us. It does, Kellen admitted. But it also makes them raw, transparent, in a way no Confederacy species has ever been. Threx turned finally, his face impassive. You're beginning to admire them. I'm beginning to understand why I can't stop thinking about them, Kellen replied. There was a long pause. No one spoke, but the air was dense with unspoken thoughts. A signal chimed, priority class. A new directive from the Confederacy's inner core had arrived. Threx opened it with a biometric pulse. The message was brief. Expedition recall denied. Continue human assessment. Authorization level raised. Threx exhaled slowly. They want more. More footage. Vierun asked. No, Threx said. More answers. Kellen bristled. How many more answers do they need before they admit what we already know? Threx studied the younger diplomat. And what do we know? Kellen stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. That humans are not stable. That they don't evolve in the traditional sense, they metastasize. Trauma doesn't destroy them. It transforms them. Into what? Vierun asked. That's what frightens me, Kellen said. I don't think they know. The console pulsed again. This time, not from Confederacy Command, but Earth itself. A live broadcast. Unencrypted. Public. The screen bloomed to life with flames. A city on fire. Civilians rioting. Police armed in black armor, indistinguishable from soldiers. A line of text scrolled across the bottom. Live. Global conflict widens. Nations accuse each other of biological sabotage. A human news anchor stared into the camera with dead eyes, reading facts like they were rumors and rumors like they were prophecy. This is what they show their own people, Vierun murmured. No disguise. No curation. Because they've normalized it, Threx said. Terror is background noise. The image shifted again, this time to a smaller screen, glitchy and low resolution. A human girl, no older than 8, speaking into a camera from a bunker. Behind her, muffled explosions. She smiled as she said, It's okay. I'm used to the sound. Kellen turned away. This isn't research anymore. It's voyeurism. No, Threx replied, voice low. It's a mirror. There was a moment of quiet. Then Vierun spoke with uncharacteristic softness. So, what do we do? Threx's gaze didn't waver from the screen. We initiate contact protocol phase 1. Controlled. Isolated. A single envoy. Kellen spun around. That's suicide. Perhaps, Threx admitted. But we've studied them from a distance long enough. We've dissected their wars, mapped their cruelty. If we want to understand them, truly, if we ever hope to stop what they might become, we must step into their world. Who would go? Vierun asked. No one on this ship is trained for cultural infiltration. Not with them. Threx turned to her, then to Kellen. I will. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum pulling at the walls. You? Kellen's voice cracked. You're High Archon. You disappear on Earth, and we risk a Confederacy fracture. Then let them fracture, Threx said. Better a divided truth than a united lie. Kellen looked at Vierun for support, but she said nothing. Only nodded, solemnly. Preparations began immediately. Threx's body was modified to match human proportions. His skin was cloaked in a bioadaptive membrane to simulate their flesh. A neural dialect module was installed behind his ear. He would pass for human in all ways except thought. The drop shuttle was small, unarmed, and cloaked. It would land in a desolate region, one of many human war zones where chaos masked presence. Before departure, Kellen approached him in the corridor. Why you? He asked again. Threx met his gaze. Because I'm the only one who no longer wants to watch them from above. Kellen hesitated. Then take this. He pressed a memory crystal into Threx's hand. A record of everything. In case you don't return. Threx nodded. If I succeed, you'll see the signal. And if you fail? Then you'll know they weren't ready. The shuttle disengaged from the veil of order, descending silently into Earth's stormlit sky. Threx sat alone, watching the clouds burn red beneath him, unsure whether he was entering a world or stepping into an extinction. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, a final thought passed through his mind, not of power or politics, but of the girl in the bunker. "I'm used to the sound." He gripped the controls and whispered, "So am I."